before the sky had a name, before mountains touched the clouds, before the sea learned how to sing, before even time understood that it was moving, there was chaos, not darkness, not emptiness, but something deeper, a silent, endless possibility where nothing had shape and everything waited to become. Chaos did not think. Chaos did not breathe. Yet from within its infinite stillness, the first stir of existence awakened. And from chaos emerged Gaia, the earth. She was not born as humans are. She simply was. Her body stretched across the endless void, forming valleys, stone, and hidden fire. Where there had been nothing, now there was ground. Where there had been silence, now there was the heartbeat of creation. Gaia felt loneliness. So from herself, she created Uranus, the sky, vast, shining, and filled with endless stars that had not yet learned to burn. When Uranus spread above her, earth and sky touched for the first time. And in that touch, life began. Children of earth and sky. From Gaia and Uranus came the Titans, beings older than memory, larger than mountains, powerful enough to shape the future of gods and men. Oceanus, the endless river. Hyperion, the light before the sun. Zeus, the keeper of wisdom. And many more. But among them was one different from the rest. Cronus, silent, watching, listening to the whispers hidden even from the gods. Uranus feared his own children. He saw their power and trembled at what they might become. So he pushed them deep into Gaia's body, locking them in darkness beneath the earth. Gaia felt their pain. She heard their cries echo through stone and fire. And for the first time since her birth, the earth became angry. The first rebellion. Gaia called to her children in secret. Who among you will rise and free your brothers and sisters from the cruelty of the sky? The Titans were mighty, but fear is heavy, even for gods. Only Cronus answered, not loudly, not proudly, but with a quiet certainty that would one day shake the universe. Gaia gave him a sickle of black stone, sharp enough to cut destiny itself. And when Uranus descended to embrace the earth that night, Cronus stepped from the shadows. One strike, one moment, one choice that could never be undone. The sky was torn away from the earth, and the rule of the first father ended. From the blood of Uranus, new beings were born, the Furies, spirits of vengeance. And from the sea that caught his falling power, something beautiful began to rise. But that story belongs to another chapter. A new king, a new fear. Cronus became ruler of the Titans. The universe had its first king, yet victory did not bring peace. Because deep inside his mind lived a whisper. One day, your own child will overthrow you. And so the cycle of fear, born in chaos, grown in the sky, and sharpened by destiny, continued. The age of Titans had begun, but far in the future, beyond thunder, prophecy, and war, a child named Zeus was waiting to be born. The child who escaped fate. Cronus ruled the universe, and under his command the Titans brought order to the newborn world. Mountains stood where he willed. Rivers flowed where he pointed. Time itself seemed to bow before the king of Titans. To the other gods, he looked powerful. To the world, he looked eternal. But inside Cronus lived fear. Not the fear of enemies, not the fear of war, but the quiet, creeping fear of prophecy. He could still hear the whisper carried from the fall of Uranus. As you overthrew your father, so shall your own child overthrow you. And fear, once planted in the heart of a king, grows faster than any forest. The devouring of children. Cronus took Rhea, gentle daughter of Gaia, as his queen. She was warmth where he was iron. She was kindness where he was storm. And for a brief moment, the universe almost felt peaceful. Then their first child was born. A daughter. Tiny. Radiant. Divine. Cronus held her in his hands and remembered the prophecy. Without a word, without hesitation, he swallowed her whole. Rhea screamed. The sky did not answer. One by one, the children came. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. And one by one, Cronus swallowed them into darkness, locking them inside himself so fate could never reach him. To the world, nothing changed. The king still ruled. The Titans still obeyed. But inside Rhea's heart, something was breaking. The mother's secret. When Rhea became pregnant again, she could not bear the silence of another loss. She went to Gaia, ancient mother of all, and begged for help. Gaia listened. The earth had seen kings rise and fall. She knew one truth that even gods forget. Nothing escapes destiny. Together, they formed a plan older than the stars. When the child was born, Rhea would hide him far from Cronus' sight, and in his place, she would give Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth. The night of escape, the child was born in secret, on the quiet island of Crete, where waves whispered instead of roared, and caves held ancient silence. He did not cry like mortal children. His first breath sounded like distant thunder. Rhea named him Zeus. To protect him, she left him in a hidden cave among the mountains. Nymphs fed him with the milk of a divine goat, Amalthea. Warriors called the Curetes clashed their shields and spears. So Cronus would never hear the baby's voice. And for the first time since chaos, hope was hidden in the world. The deception of a king. Rhea returned to Cronus, holding the stone wrapped like a newborn child. Cronus did not look closely. Fear rarely does. He swallowed the stone, believing fate had been defeated once more. And so Zeus lived. He grew in secret, not as a helpless child, but as a storm gathering strength beyond the horizon. He learned from the whispers of Gaia, from the patience of earth, from the endless sky that waited above him. He learned one truth. Kings who rule through fear always fall to courage. The beginning of war. Years passed in silence. Cronus believed himself safe. The Titans believed the age would last forever. But deep in the hidden cave of Crete, Zeus had become something new. Not Titan, not child, but the first of the Olympians. And when the time came, he would return to free his brothers and sisters, challenge the king of Titans, and begin a war that would shake heaven, earth, and sea. A war remembered forever as the Titanomachy. But the fall of Cronus and the rise of thunder belongs to the next chapter, the War of the Titans. The cave of Crete could no longer hold him. Years had passed like silent waves against stone, and the hidden child had grown into Zeus, tall as a young mountain, eyes bright with stormlight, voice carrying the quiet promise of thunder. He knew the truth of his birth. He knew the cruelty of Cronus. He knew his brothers and sisters still lived, not in the world, but imprisoned in the darkness inside their father. And Zeus understood something even deeper. This was not only a rescue. This was destiny. The return of the hidden sun, guided by Gaia's whisper, and the patience of the earth beneath his feet. Zeus left Crete in silence. No armies, no thunder, no glory, only purpose. To defeat a king who feared prophecy, Zeus would first need cunning. He came to Cronus not as a warrior, but in disguise, a servant, a cupbearer, a shadow among Titans. And there, inside the halls of power, he waited, because even storms must choose the perfect moment to break. The bitter drink. Gaia gave Zeus a secret gift, a potion older than memory, strong enough to force even a god to release what he had swallowed. During a great feast of the Titans, when laughter echoed across the heavens, and Cronus believed himself eternal, Zeus poured the drink into the king's cup. Cronus drank deeply. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the universe shuddered. Pain unlike any he had known tore through the king of Titans, and from his immortal body, one by one, the swallowed gods returned to the light. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. They emerged not as children, but as full-grown gods, unchanged by time, burning with ancient fury. The silence that followed was heavier than the sky itself. Cronus looked upon Zeus and knew prophecy had found him. The first thunder. War did not begin with armies. It began with a single moment, a glance between father and son, past and future, fear and destiny. Cronus rose in rage. The Titans gathered behind their king. Mountains trembled beneath their steps. But Zeus did not step back. For the first time in existence, he raised his hand to the sky and called upon a power the world had never seen. The clouds darkened. The wind screamed. Light split the heavens open. And from the heart of the storm fell the first thunderbolt. It struck the ground before Cronus, shattering stone like fragile glass, filling heaven and earth with blinding fire. The age of silent rule was over. The Titanomachy had begun. Allies from the deep. The war could not be won by strength alone. Gaia spoke again to Zeus. Free the ones your father feared most, and victory will follow. Deep beneath the earth, in prisons older than the mountains, were chained the Cyclopes and the 100-handed giants, monsters of terrible power, imprisoned long ago by Uranus and forgotten by time. Zeus descended into darkness, broke their chains, and gave them freedom. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged gifts, worthy of the coming war. Thunderbolts for Zeus, living lightning shaped into weapons. A trident for Poseidon, able to command every sea. A helm of invisibility for Hades, turning the unseen into power. The balance of the universe shifted. For the first time, hope stood equal to fear. 10 years of heaven's war. The battle between Titans and Olympians did not last days, nor months, but 10 long years. Mountains were thrown like stones. Oceans boiled. Stars hid behind smoke and fire. The Titans fought with ancient strength, the power of the first world, raw and unyielding. But the Olympians fought with something new. Future. Every thunderbolt Zeus hurled carried the promise of change. Every wave Poseidon raised washed away the old order. Every silent step of Hades reminded the Titans that even gods can fall. Still, neither side could claim victory until the final day, the fall of Cronus. On the last battlefield, where earth, sea, and sky collided, Zeus rose above the storm itself. Lightning crowned his head. Thunder obeyed his voice. Even time seemed to pause, to witness the end of an age. Cronus charged with the fury of a dying king. Father against son, past against future, fear against destiny. The clash shook creation. Then Zeus struck, not with anger, but with certainty. A thunderbolt brighter than the sun tore through the heavens and cast Cronus down. The king of Titans fell, and with him, the first age of the universe ended. A new world begins. The surviving Titans were chained in the deepest abyss, Tartarus, far below Earth, far beyond light. The war was over. Silence returned to the cosmos. But this silence was different. It was not empty like chaos. It was not fearful like Cronus' rule. It was the quiet moment. Before a new beginning, Zeus and his brothers stood together, free at last, gazing upon a world that no longer had a king, until they chose what came next. Because victory in war is only the first step, the true question was still waiting. Who would rule the universe now? And the answer would shape the fate of gods, and someday, humans. The rise of Olympus. The war was over. For the first time since the birth of chaos, the universe was quiet. No chains breaking beneath the earth. No thunder tearing the sky. No cries of titans echoing across eternity. Only silence. And the three brothers who had changed everything. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. They stood upon the newborn world. Victors of a war older than memory, yet uncertain of what victory truly meant. Because defeating a king is easier than becoming one. Dividing the universe, the brothers knew one truth. If they fought among themselves, the world would fall into ruin again. So they chose chance over conflict. Upon the sacred ground of the new age, they cast lots to divide creation itself. Not by strength, not by pride, but by destiny. Zeus received the sky, the endless height, the clouds, the lightning, and the throne above all things. Poseidon claimed the sea, deep, restless, powerful, holding both life and destruction in its tides. Hades was given the underworld, the silent realm beneath the earth, where shadows gather, and every mortal journey must end. The earth itself remained shared among them, open to gods, creatures, and beings not yet born. Thus the rule of the Olympians began. The mountain of the gods, high above the world, beyond storm and cloud, stood a mountain untouched by time. Olympus. Its peaks shone with eternal snow. Its halls were built of light and golden stone. No wind could harm it. No mortal could reach it. Here, Zeus raised his throne, not as a tyrant like Cronus, but as a king of order. Around him gathered the new gods. Hera, queen of heaven. Poseidon, lord of waves. Demeter, giver of harvest. Hestia, keeper of sacred fire. Ares, spirit of war. Athena, wisdom born from thunder yet to come. And many others whose stories were still waiting. Olympus was not only a palace. It was a promise that the chaos of the old world would never return. But even promises made by gods can break. The birth of mortals. The world was vast, beautiful, and empty. Rivers flowed with no one to follow them. Forests grew with no eyes to see their green shadows. Stars shone over silent land. Some say it was Prometheus, a titan who chose wisdom over war, who shaped the first humans from clay. Others say the earth herself dreamed them into being. However it happened, Mortals opened their eyes. Beneath the rule of Olympus, they were fragile, short-lived, uncertain, yet inside them burned something strange, a spark even gods could not fully understand. Hope. Zeus watched them carefully, for he remembered the prophecy of kings, and he wondered, could mortals one day challenge even the gods? Shadows beneath victory. Though Olympus shone with glory, not all hearts were peaceful. Hera saw Zeus growing power and felt the first seed of jealousy. Poseidon ruled the seas, but never forgot he had not received the sky. Hades sat alone in the underworld, far from light, far from praise, king of a realm no god desired. And deep in Tartarus, the defeated Titans waited in chains, their anger sleeping like fire beneath stone. The war had ended, but conflict had only changed its form. The first sign of trouble, one night on Olympus, as the gods feasted beneath eternal stars, a distant rumble echoed from the depths of the earth. Not thunder, not earthquake, something older, something that remembered the first age. Zeus felt it in the air, a warning carried through creation itself. Victory was real. Olympus was strong. The world was new. Yet destiny was not finished, because power always calls forth a challenge. And from the shadows of gods, titans, and the fragile hearts of mortals, new stories were beginning to rise. Stories of fire stolen from heaven, of love and betrayal, of heroes who would walk between God and man. But those tales belong to the next chapter. Prometheus and the fire of humanity. Long before heroes carried swords, and long before cities rose from dust, there lived a titan who did not dream of power. His name was Prometheus. While other titans chose war, and others chose silence and chains, Prometheus chose something stranger. He chose humanity, the friend of mortals. Prometheus walked among the first humans, when the world was still young and uncertain. They feared the dark. They trembled before storms. They did not understand the seasons, nor the stars above their heads. They were alive, but they were helpless. Prometheus watched them struggle to survive cold nights and wild beasts, and something within an immortal heart began to ache. For the first time, a god felt pity. He taught them small things at first: how to count the passing days, how to shape words into meaning, how to read the sky for coming rain. But knowledge alone could not save them from darkness. They needed something more. They needed fire. Zeus' forbidden gift. Fire was not merely warmth. It was power. It belonged to the gods of Olympus, kept in sacred flame, where no mortal hand could reach. Because Zeus believed one truth: if humans gained too much strength, they might forget to fear the gods. So fire remained in heaven, and mortals remained in shadow. Prometheus knew the law. He knew the punishment. He knew the wrath of Zeus was heavier than mountains. And still, he made his choice: the theft of flame. On a silent night, when even Olympus seemed asleep, Prometheus climbed toward the halls of the gods. No thunder sounded. No guard saw him pass. He reached the sacred fire, bright as the heart of a star, alive with divine breath. Carefully, he hid a burning spark inside a hollow fennel stalk, shielding its light from heaven's eyes. Then he descended to earth and placed the flame into the trembling hands of humanity. For the first time, darkness retreated. Fires rose across the land. Small, fragile suns, born in mortal homes. Humans laughed in the night. Shadows danced on cave walls. Cold lost its power. And in that moment, the world changed forever. The wrath of the king of gods. Nothing escapes Zeus for long. From the heights of Olympus, he saw the glow of mortal fires, spreading like fallen stars across the earth. He understood at once. Prometheus had defied him, not in war, not in rebellion, but in something far more dangerous: mercy. Zeus' anger shook the heavens. Clouds gathered without wind. Thunder spoke without lightning. Because a king may forgive many crimes, but never the breaking of divine order. Chains upon the mountain. Prometheus did not run. When the servants of Zeus came for him, he stood in silence, accepting the fate he had chosen. They carried him to the farthest edge of the world, to a lonely mountain where no voice could echo. There they bound him to black stone, with chains no god could break. Yet punishment was not finished. Each day, an eagle of Zeus descended from the sky and tore at Prometheus' immortal flesh, devouring his liver again and again. Each night, the wound healed, so suffering could begin anew with dawn. An endless pain, an eternal price, all for a single gift, given to creatures made of clay, the first sorrow of humanity. But Zeus' vengeance did not end with Prometheus. If humans had received fire, they would also learn suffering. So Zeus created something beautiful and terrible, a woman shaped by the gods themselves. Her name was Pandora, and within her hands, she carried a jar that would open the door to every sorrow the world would ever know. But that story has not yet begun. Hope in the darkness. Though chained and alone, Prometheus did not regret his choice. Far below his mountain, he could see the tiny lights of human fire glowing against the night. And he knew a truth. Even Zeus could not destroy, as long as fire burns in mortal hands. The future belongs not only to gods, but to humanity. Yet the gift of fire was only the beginning, because soon the world would learn that every blessing cast a shadow, and from a single open jar would come pain, illness, jealousy, and loss. Trials that would shape every human story to follow. Those trials await in the next chapter. Pandora's jar and the birth of suffering. High upon Olympus, where clouds glow like silver, and time moves as softly as breath, Zeus watched the fires of humanity. They burned in valleys, on distant hills, inside fragile homes of clay and hope. Each flame was a reminder of disobedience, of mercy, of a titan who dared to love mortals. Zeus would not take the fire away. Instead, he chose something far more subtle, a gift. The first woman, from earth and water, the gods shaped a woman, more beautiful than dawn. Each Olympian offered her something rare. Athena gave wisdom and skillful hands. Aphrodite gave irresistible beauty. Hermes gave curiosity and a whisper of deception. Hera gave grace and dignity. And Zeus himself gave life. They named her Pandora, the one who carries every gift. She opened her eyes to a world she did not understand, yet felt drawn toward, because destiny had already chosen her path. A wedding without joy. Zeus sent Pandora to Earth as a bride for Prometheus, brother of Prometheus. Long ago, Prometheus had warned him, never accept a gift from Zeus. But warnings fade when beauty stands at the door. Prometheus welcomed Pandora, and with her, the quiet turning of fate. She brought a sealed jar, given by the gods with one command. Never open it. No reason, no explanation, only silence. And silence is the seed from which curiosity grows. The whisper of the jar. Days passed in peace. Pandora walked through sunlight, touched rivers, laughed with the wonder of someone seeing the world for the first time. Yet always, in the corner of the room, in the edge of her thoughts, stood the jar, unopened, unmoving, waiting. At night she dreamed of it. In daylight she heard it calling. Without sound, not a command, not a force, only a question. What is inside? And questions, once born in the human heart, rarely die. The opening of fate. One quiet moment. No thunder, no warning. Pandora lifted the lid. At first nothing. Then the air screamed. From the jar burst shadows without form. Pain, sickness, jealousy, hunger, grief, fear, death. They flew across the earth, faster than wind, entering every human life, every future story. Laughter turned to tears. Strength turned to weakness. Love learned the meaning of loss. Pandora fell to the ground, realizing too late that some doors cannot be closed. In terror, she slammed the lid shut. Silence returned. But the world was no longer innocent. The last thing inside. Pandora wept beside the sealed jar, afraid to look again, afraid of what remained. Yet from within the darkness came a soft glow, not like the wild shadows before, but gentle, patient, warm. Slowly, trembling, she opened the lid once more. From the jar rose a single spirit. Hope, not loud, not powerful, not able to erase suffering, but able to endure. Hope drifted into the world and settled quietly inside the hearts of mortals, so that even in pain, they would keep walking. Even in darkness, they would search for light. Even in death, they would dream of tomorrow. And Zeus, watching from Olympus, saw that balance had been restored. Humans had fire. Humans had suffering. And now, humans had hope. The world after innocence. Nothing could return to what it was. Mortals would now live short lives, filled with struggle and wonder. Gods would watch from distant heights, sometimes helping, sometimes punishing, always shaping destiny. And somewhere on a lonely mountain, Prometheus still endured his chains, not knowing that one day, a hero yet unborn would set him free, because the age of gods alone was ending. The age of heroes was about to begin. Stories of strength and tragedy, of monsters and courage, of mortals who dared to challenge fate itself. The first of those heroes was already on his way. His name would be remembered forever, Heracles, but his trials and the monsters that awaited him belonged to the next chapter, the 12 labors of Heracles. In an age when gods still walked close to the earth and monsters hid beyond the edges of maps, a child was born beneath a sky heavy with destiny. His name was Heracles, son of Zeus, yet born to a mortal mother, Alcmene. He carried two worlds within a single heart, the strength of a god and the suffering of a human. And from the moment he opened his eyes, Hera was already watching. The jealous queen, Hera, queen of Olympus, had never forgiven Zeus' betrayals. Each child born from another woman was a wound that would not close. But Heracles was different, because prophecy whispered that this child would become the greatest hero of all time. So Hera chose not a quick death, but a slow tragedy. She waited, she watched, and when the moment came, she struck not the body, but the mind. Madness and guilt. Years passed, and Heracles grew into a man, stronger than any warrior alive. He fought beasts. He defended cities. He became a symbol of hope. He married. He had children. For a brief moment, his life held peace. Then Hera sent madness upon him, a darkness without warning, a storm inside the soul. Blinded by divine fury, Heracles did the unthinkable. He destroyed the very family he loved. When clarity returned, silence was all that remained. No monster's roar had ever been more terrible than his own memory. Broken by grief, he sought only one thing: atonement, the judgment of the gods. Heracles traveled to Delphi, to the sacred oracle of Apollo, where truth speaks through riddles. There he asked how to cleanse his guilt, how to live after the unforgivable. The answer was cruel, yet just. He must serve King Eurystheus for 12 long years and complete whatever tasks were given. Not glory, not freedom, only labor. Thus began the trials that would echo through eternity. The first monsters. Each labor was meant to be impossible, a path toward death, not redemption. Yet Heracles walked it anyway. The Nemean lion, a beast whose golden skin no weapon could pierce. Heracles strangled it with his bare hands and wore its hide as armor. The Lernaean hydra, a serpent with many heads, each one growing back when cut. With fire and patience, he burned the wounds until the monster fell silent. The Ceryneian hind, sacred to Artemis, swift as wind, he chased it for a year, without anger, without violence, learning restraint instead of strength, because the labors were changing him, not only testing power, but shaping the soul. Trials beyond strength. The tasks grew stranger, more distant, more impossible. Capturing the Erymanthian boar alive, cleaning the Augean stables in a single day, by turning rivers themselves, stealing the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded at the edge of the world, descending into the underworld, to face Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of death, and returning alive. Each victory brought him closer, not to pride, but to peace, because redemption is not won in battle. It is built step by step, through suffering endured. The meaning of a hero. When the 12 years ended, Heracles stood changed, still strong, still scarred, still carrying memories no god could erase, but no longer broken. The world saw a warrior, the gods saw a servant, but fate saw something greater, a mortal who proved that even after the darkest sin, a path toward light can still exist. And in time, after more trials and final sacrifice, Heracles would not descend into shadow like ordinary men. Instead, he would rise to Olympus itself, becoming immortal among the gods. The first hero to cross the boundary between human and divine. Beyond one hero. Yet Heracles was only the beginning. Across Greece, new heroes were already rising. A slayer of the Minotaur in a labyrinth of stone. A warrior with an unbreakable heel. A voyager who would wander for 10 long years across the sea. Their stories of glory, pride, love, and ruin would shape the destiny of mortals, even more than the wars of gods, because the age of heroes burns brightest just before it ends. And the greatest war of all was still waiting. A war for a single city. Troy. The fall of Troy. Long after the rise of heroes, and long after Heracles walked the earth, fate began to weave a new tragedy. Not in darkness, not in secret, but in beauty, because the greatest wars often begin with something small. The golden apple. High on Olympus, the gods gathered for a wedding feast. A moment of peace among immortals. All were invited, except one. Eris, goddess of discord. Unwanted, unseen. She came anyway, not with sword or thunder, but with a single object. A golden apple, inscribed with silent words. For the fairest. She cast it among the goddesses, and vanished into shadow. At once, harmony shattered. Hera, Athena, Aphrodite, each claimed the apple. Each demanded victory, and none would yield. Even Zeus refused to judge. For choosing beauty among goddesses is choosing war. So the decision was given to a mortal prince of Troy, Paris. The choice of Paris. On a quiet mountain, far from crowns and armies, Paris faced the three goddesses. Each offered him a gift. Hera promised power to rule all kingdoms of earth. Athena promised wisdom and victory in war. Aphrodite promised the love of the most beautiful woman alive. Paris chose love. He gave the apple to Aphrodite, and with that single choice, the fate of cities was sealed, because the woman promised to him was Helen, queen of Sparta, already married. Love became theft. Theft became insult. Insult became war. The gathering of heroes. Across Greece, kings and warriors answered the call. Agamemnon, lord of men. Odysseus, master of cunning. Ajax, mighty as a living wall. And greatest of all, Achilles, swift-footed, near invincible, destined for eternal glory. And an early death. 1,000 ships crossed the sea, their sails darkening the horizon, carrying heroes toward Troy. The war had begun. Before the first spear was thrown. 10 years of blood. The siege of Troy lasted. 10 long years. Battles raged beneath burning suns. Shields shattered. Friends fell. Gods themselves chose sides, turning victory and loss. Like pieces in a game of fate. Among all warriors, two shone brightest. Achilles of Greece and Hector of Troy. When they finally met in battle, the world seemed to hold its breath. Hector fell. Troy wept. And Achilles' glory moved one step closer to death. Because prophecy never forgets. The arrow and the heel, though stronger than any hero, Achilles carried a hidden weakness. A single mortal place upon his body. During the final battles, an arrow guided by the gods found that fragile point. His heel, the greatest warrior of Greece, fell to the dust, and with him, the war lost its brightest flame. Yet Troy still stood, walls unbroken, gates unfallen, hope not yet gone. The horse of deception. Victory would not come by strength. So Odysseus chose cunning. The Greeks built a giant wooden horse, hollow and silent, and hid warriors inside its dark heart. Then the army sailed away, or seemed to. The Trojans believed the war was over. They pulled the horse into their city as a symbol of triumph. Night fell. Stars watched, and from within the horse, death awakened. Greek warriors opened the gates. The hidden army returned. Fire swallowed Troy. The city that had stood for centuries fell in a single night. Ashes and echoes. When dawn came, Troy was no more. Only smoke. Only ruins. Only stories carried by survivors. Across the sea, the war was finished. But victory felt empty. Heroes were dead. Homes were lost. And the gods had shone once more. Even glory ends in sorrow. The journey still ahead. For one hero, the story was not over. Odysseus had won the war, yet could not return home. The sea itself would test him, with monsters, storms, enchantresses, and years of wandering. Because sometimes, the hardest battle begins after victory, and his long road home belongs to the next chapter. The Odyssey of Odysseus. Troy had fallen. Its towers were ash. Its heroes were shadows carried by memory. Across the dark sea, Greek ships turned toward home, toward families, toward peace, toward the quiet life that waits after war. But for one king, the journey would not be simple. His name was Odysseus, and the sea had chosen to test him. The anger of the sea god. During the war, Odysseus had wounded pride deeper than flesh. He had blinded Polyphemus, a giant cyclops, son of Poseidon, lord of the restless sea. Gods forgive slowly. See, gods almost never. So when Odysseus sailed for home, Poseidon lifted his trident and whispered to the waves, "Let him wander." Storms answered. Winds turned. The straight path vanished, and a voyage of weeks became a journey of 10 years. The island of the Cyclops. Early in his travels, Odysseus entered a dark cave, seeking shelter and food. Instead, he found Polyphemus. The giant trapped the sailors inside, devouring them one by one. Raw strength against mortal fear. Odysseus could not win by force, so he used the weapon that had defeated Troy. Cunning. He offered the Cyclops wine, strong as sleep itself, and when the monster fell unconscious, drove a burning stake into his single eye. Blind and roaring, Polyphemus asked the name of his enemy. Odysseus answered, "Nobody." So when the giant cried for help, he could only shout, "Nobody is killing me." And help never came. Yet as the ships escaped, Odysseus made one fatal mistake. He revealed his true name. Pride travels faster than wisdom. And Poseidon heard wonders and traps of the sea. Years passed like drifting waves. Odysseus faced trials beyond counting. The sirens, whose songs promised perfect happiness, but ended in death upon the rocks. He listened while bound to the mast, choosing pain over destruction. Scylla and Charybdis, monster and whirlpool guarding a narrow strait. To save the ship, he accepted losing a few men, learning the cruel cost of leadership. The island of the sun god, where hungry sailors disobeyed divine warning and sealed their own doom. One by one, his companions vanished, until only Odysseus remained. The prison of immortality. At last the sea carried him to the hidden island of Calypso, a nymph more ancient than sorrow. She saved his life. She loved him. She offered him a gift no mortal had ever refused. Eternal life. No aging. No death. No more suffering. Only endless days. In a paradise outside time. And yet, Odysseus wept, because far away, beyond storms and years, waited something immortality could never replace. Home. So even paradise became a prison. The mercy of the gods. Athena, who favored clever minds, looked upon Odysseus with compassion. She spoke to Zeus, and the king of gods agreed. The hero had suffered enough. Hermes carried the command to Calypso. Reluctantly, she let Odysseus go, not with anger, but with quiet sorrow. For even immortals cannot hold what longs for home. Returned to Ithaca. After 20 years of war and wandering, Odysseus finally reached Ithaca. His kingdom, his memory, his dream. But home had changed. Suitors filled his halls, believing him dead, seeking to claim his throne. And his faithful wife, Penelope. Odysseus did not rush forward. War had taught him patience. Disguised as a beggar, he entered his own palace unseen, waiting for the perfect moment, just as he once had before Troy. Then, with bow in hand, and truth revealed, he struck. Justice fell swift as arrows. And at last, silence returned to his house. Not the silence of loss, but the silence of peace. The meaning of the journey. Odysseus had seen monsters, gods, death, and immortality itself. Yet the greatest lesson of his long road was simple. To be human, to love, to suffer, to return, is greater than living forever. And so the wandering ended. But something else was ending too. The age of heroes was fading. Gods would grow distant. Myths would become memories, told beside mortal fires. The world was changing again. And one final story remained. The story of how myth becomes legend, and how the voices of gods echo even into the present day. That ending awaits the last chapter. The twilight of the gods and the birth of legend. Time, which even gods cannot fully command, continued its silent journey. The great wars were finished. The heroes had lived and fallen. Cities rose where ruins once smoked. And slowly, the distance between gods and mortals began to grow. When Olympus grew quiet, once the voices of gods had echoed across mountains and seas. Thunder spoke with Zeus' anger. Waves rose with Poseidon's will. Dreams carried whispers from Athena. But as generations of humans passed, their world began to change. They built laws instead of seeking oracles. They raised cities instead of wandering forests. They searched for reason, where once they had searched for miracles. And Olympus, eternal, shining, untouched by age, grew strangely silent. Not empty, never empty, but distant, like a memory half remembered at dawn. The last heroes. The final heroes walked a different path from those before them. They did not fight titans. They did not storm the heavens. They struggled instead, with kingdoms, choices, and time. Because the greatest enemy now was no longer monsters, but forgetting. One by one, the children of legend faded into story, and story faded into song. Yet something of them remained, not in temples of stone, but in the hearts of people who still listened beside the fire. What became of the gods? Did the gods disappear? No myth agrees. Some say they still dwell on Olympus, watching silently as the world moves on. Some say they became the forces of nature themselves. Thunder, sea, wisdom, love. Others believe they live only in memory, kept alive each time their names are spoken. And perhaps all are true, because gods of myth do not need bodies of gold. They live wherever humans ask questions about fate, justice, love, and the meaning of being alive. The gift of myth, the stories of chaos, of titans and thunder, of heroes who walked between death and glory, were never only about the past. They were mirrors. In Zeus, humans saw power and responsibility. In Prometheus, rebellion and sacrifice. In Pandora, curiosity and consequence. In Heracles, guilt and redemption. In Odysseus, the endless search for home. Myth became a way for mortals to understand themselves. And that is why the stories never truly end. From firelight to forever. Long ago, humans gathered around small fires to speak the names of gods. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. Languages changed. Yet even now, in books, in films, in quiet thoughts before sleep, the old stories still breathe. Because every time someone asks, where did the world begin? Why do we suffer? What makes a hero? What is home? The voice of ancient myth answers softly from the darkness. The true beginning. So was this the end? Perhaps not. Because the birth of gods, the fall of heroes, and the twilight of Olympus were never only the story of them. They were the story of us. Every courage and fear, every hope and suffering, every light carried through darkness. Just as Prometheus' fire still burns in human hands. And as long as that fire lives, the myths of Greece and the dreams they carry will never fade.